Summer did not ruin hands all at once. It did it quietly, while the beans were picked, the dishes were washed, the sheets were wrung out, and the garden dirt was scrubbed from under the nails. By evening, the signs were small but certain. Tight skin across the knuckles, elbows gone rough, fingertips beginning to split, and that sharp sting when soap touched a crack. Mother never waited for the pain to announce itself. She believed the real cure started before the damage had a chance to settle in. Every June, before the sun had turned the yard hard and white, Mother made one small batch of her summer salve. She did not make it by the jarful, and she did not treat it like a special cure. It was simply part of getting ready, the same as sharpening the hoe, washing the porch screens, or setting aside old shirts for garden work. She used to say, skin was like a garden bed. If you watered it only after the leaves curled, you were already behind. A little care early kept the cracks from opening, the rough places from catching, and the sting from becoming part of every core. I remember that salve because the whole recipe fit inside a child's memory. There were no labels to study, no measurements that needed a scale, and no complicated steps that made it feel like medicine. It was golden, soft, and plain, made in a kitchen where everything useful had to earn its place. Mother would melt it slowly, stir it until it turned smooth, and pour it into a clean little tin. By the next morning it was ready for elbows, knuckles, heels, and the backs of hands before work began. That was the secret of it. She was not waiting for summer to do its worst. She was giving the skin something to lean on first. And next, I will show you the exact ingredients she used and why each one mattered. The whole jar began with 1 cup of olive oil. That was the base, the carrier that held everything else and gave the salve its slip. After sun, soil, dishwater, and repeated washing, olive oil helped slow the loss of moisture from the skin, which mattered most on hands that were never truly finished working. Into that oil went 1/4 cup of dried calendula. Mother treated calendula as the cheerful herb, bright even after drying, and she used it in gentle salves for skin that felt dry, rough, or easily irritated. It gave the oil its deeper golden color and made the whole jar look as if summer had been saved in it. Then came 2 tablespoons of dried chamomile. Chamomile, the quiet herb she trusted for skin that needed calm after heat, dust, and friction. It was not there for scent alone. It belonged in the jar because hard-working skin often needed gentleness more than anything sharp or strong. She also added 2 tablespoons of dried plantain leaf. This was not the banana-like fruit, but the common green weed that grew along paths and yards. In old household salves, plantain was used for rough, bothered skin, the kind that came from garden rows, tool handles, and long days outdoors. After the herbs had given themselves to the oil, Mother added 1 ounce of grated beeswax. That was what changed the infused oil into a salve. Beeswax gave it body, helped it stay where it was rubbed, and left a light protective layer over the skin. Lavender essential oil was optional. A few drops made the jar smell finished, but the salve did not depend on it. The real work came from the oil, the herbs, and the beeswax. Mother set the olive oil and dried herbs into a small pot and turned the burner to the lowest heat it would give. The surface never bubbled. It only warmed until the oil moved a little more easily around the calendula, chamomile, and plantain. That pot stayed there for 2 to 3 hours. She would pass it now and then, give it a slow stir, and check that it was not getting too hot. If the kitchen began to smell sharp or cooked, the heat was wrong. The scent was supposed to stay soft, more like warm oil and dried flowers than anything fried. This was the part she refused to hurry. Strong heat could damage the herbs and turn a careful preparation into something harsh. Low heat gave the oil time to pull out color and character without scorching the leaves and blossoms at the bottom of the pot. When the oil had turned a clear golden shade, she took it off the stove and set a clean cloth over a bowl. The herbs were poured in carefully, then gathered in the cloth and pressed until the last warm drops came through. What remained was not a tea, not a lotion, but an infused oil ready to be given body. She returned that strained oil to the pot and added the grated beeswax. This time the heat only needed to melt the wax. As soon as the shavings disappeared, she removed the pot again and let it cool slightly before adding lavender if she was using it. Lavender went in late because its scent was too delicate for long heat. Then came the small glass jars. She poured the warm salve while it was still liquid, wiped the rims clean, and set the jars on the windowsill. By evening, the golden surface had firmed into a smooth balm, ready for the next hot day's hands. The jar that looked too small in June usually lasted almost until September. That was not because the salve was weak. It was because Mother never used it by the handful. After the breakfast dishes, she rubbed a thin shine across her knuckles and around her nails. After pulling weeds or tying up tomato vines, she did the same before the dirt had fully left the creases of her hands. Laundry days got a little more, especially after wringing wet cloth or hanging sheets in the sun. Outdoor chores got their share too, but always in that same small amount, just enough to leave the skin protected, not greasy. She never treated the jar like medicine saved for a bad day. It sat where she could see it, near the sink or beside the back door, because that was where her hands paid the price for the work. The habit mattered more than the size of the batch. If her fingers were already split, she considered herself late. She did not wait for burning skin, ragged cuticles, or cracks at the corners of her thumbs. She used the salve the way some people oil a wooden handle before it dries out and splinters. That was the real lesson hidden in the little glass jar. Dryness did not arrive all at once. It built quietly through soap, sun, soil, wind, and water, one day at a time. So Mother answered it the same way, quietly, one day at a time, before her hands ever had to ask for help. Mother was not against changing a recipe, but she had a short list of changes she trusted and a longer list she would not allow. Lavender was the easiest to leave out. If the scent bothered someone, or if the flowers were not on hand, she simply skipped it. The salve still did its work. She cared more about the calendula, the chamomile, the oil, and the beeswax than about making every jar smell the same. She also accepted gentle oils in place of olive oil. Sweet almond oil made a lighter salve. Sunflower oil worked well when it was fresh and plain. What she avoided were sharp-smelling oils, old oils from the back of a cupboard, or anything that felt more like a kitchen experiment than skincare. Her firmest rule was about the herbs. They had to be dried. Fresh flowers might look prettier in the jar, but their moisture could spoil the oil and shorten the life of the salve. Mother would rather wait for herbs to dry properly than throw away a cloudy, sour-smelling batch. 2 weeks later, heat was the next place people got into trouble. She never tried to rush an infusion by turning the stove high. Hotter did not mean stronger. Low heat pulled the goodness from the herbs without cooking the oil or making the mixture harsh. Then came the beeswax. Too much, and the salve dragged across the skin like a candle. Too little, and it stayed oily in the jar. Her usual balance was about 1 ounce of beeswax for each cup of infused oil, enough to hold the salve together while keeping it soft enough for daily use. Those were Mother's rules. Dried herbs, low heat, clean oil, and just enough wax. Everything else was decoration. That salve belonged to a larger habit my mother had. She tried to care for things before they became emergencies. She sharpened garden tools before the first hard week of planting. She walked the fence line before an animal found the weak board. She canned beans and tomatoes before the basket on the porch, softened in the heat. She patched a sleeve when the cloth first thinned, not after the elbow had torn through. The lotion jar sat in that same world. It was not a cure for neglect. It was part of not letting neglect begin. One summer afternoon, a neighbor saw the little jars cooling on the counter and asked why Mother bothered when the stores sold rows of lotions already made. She could point to the calendula and say it soothed. She could name the chamomile and explain why it was gentle. She knew the oil, the wax, and the clean jar it was poured into. That mattered to her. Care was not only the result, It was knowing what you had trusted your body to. Her hands were never soft in the way advertisements promised. The knuckles were darkened from sun. Her fingertips carried tiny cracks from water, flour, soil, and soap. A small scar crossed one thumb from a kitchen knife that slipped during corn season. Her hands were never abandoned. At night she rubbed the salve into the places that worked hardest. To her that was not vanity. It was thanks. Those hands fed people, planted rows, washed sheets, baked bread, held fevered children, and kept a household moving. The salve was her quiet way of honoring them before asking them to begin again tomorrow. So the recipe was simple. Warm the herbs slowly in oil, strain them clean, melt in the beeswax, pour the salve into jars, and let it cool. But the real lesson was harder to measure. Care before the damage shows. Prevention is quieter, cheaper, and kinder than repair. Thank you for watching. In the comments, tell me what simple remedy or habit your family passed down. My mother left more than herbs and beeswax. She left the habit of caring for what faithfully cares for us.